2021 3,000 meter virtual event. I'll just add. Good evening, Brian.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. So I'm just starting up with some updates that I got. So I think that Patafa had a press conference early today, and they announced that their National Open and National Training Camp won't happen until the third quarter of 2021, which is around, I estimated it would be June or July, but my source said that it won't be until about September, which is cutting it really close to the Southeast Asian Games, because the Southeast Asian Games is in November and December, and I think, isn't the qualification or the cutoff supposed to be October for the task force? So it's really cutting everything really, really close to the deadline. So basically, that means that all that's pretty much happening until that time is virtual meets. So I just mainly start with the virtual event for the 3,000 meters. This event was organized by the Iloilo running community, which is a group of runners in Iloilo, and Pinoy Athletics isn't the organizer of the event, but we sort of gave them a bit of help in, with the administrative side of the entries and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, the guy from Iloilo Athletics, Jason Aperio, he's got a really bad internet connection there, so he's not able to really, connect. So I just I've got a link here, which I'll just post, and this is the entry list for the meet. So the 3,000 meters has a total of 45 men and 29 women entered in the event. And among the entry, so I've just posted a link to this for the start list on the side for anyone who's interested in viewing the start list. So among the entries and the men, we're now allowed to announce that the Southeast Asian Games bronze medalist in the 5,000 meters, Sonny Wagdos, will be joining the event. He's of course a member of Philippine Air Force. It's one of the stronger entries in the event. Also in the men, we will be having our friend Braza, who is the Palarong Pambansa champion in the 1500 and the 3000 from 2019. And he also won the 5K Pinoy Athletics Talking Chinoy virtual event and the 10,000 meters at the BBG Run PH virtual event, which was organized by Coach Roalano, who's currently has the Davao International Marathon in progress at the moment. So hopefully we should have some updates on the athletes at the Davao International Marathon, which is ongoing as well at the moment. This virtual event, 3,000 meters, it will take place from February 19 up until the close is February 21 at 8 a.m. in the morning. So all the videos have to be submitted by that point. And of course, the entries mainly preferred are on track ovals, because a lot of track ovals are now opening up. In fact, two of the main contenders, Alfrense Braza, the Palarong Pambansa champion and virtual run champion for the last few events, and Edgar Carrado, who's the national junior champion in the 800 meters in 2019, and also the MVP in the UAAP in the juniors from Adamson University, but from Iloilo. They're actually racing against each other on Saturday morning at the Iloilo Sports Complex. with some other runners. So as track will start opening up, it becomes more possible to have minimalized time trial type events. Of course, you can't have large groups because of the COVID, but you can just sort of integrate it into training sessions. Um, also in the starting list of the men is Ed Carlos Sibiliano, who's the NCAA champion in the 800 and the 1500-meter run. Jerry Vasquez, the Polaroid champion in the steeplechase. Just browsing. Eldrin Neri, the UAAP record holder in the 8 and the 1500 meters. I'm not too sure who most of the others are in the list. There's a lot of guys entered from Ilo Athletics. In fact, probably out of the 45 entries, about maybe 15 of them are from Ilo, and the rest are from the other parts of the Philippines, from all regions, like are pretty much represented here. There's athletes from Mindanao, there's athletes from different parts of the Visayas, there's athletes from Luzon, so all the Philippines is pretty well represented at this event. And in the women, there's 29 entries. So the women is a bit more of an open event in terms of there's a lot of quite accomplished athletes in the women's event, but I wouldn't say there's anyone who's sort of like an A grade athlete. We don't have the star power of say a Tabal or a Halasgo or even Joy Gagnow in this event. But in the event, there were quite a few women in this event who ran under 11 minutes, like Polaroid champion Leslie De Lima, who's run 10:22. She's the back-to-back Polaroid champion in the 1.5 and the 3000. We also have going through the list, the Prisa champion Edna Magtubo, and the runner-up in the Western Visayas meet Annalyn Monoy, and also Maria Laika Sarmiento, a UAAP medalist, perennially in the 815 steeplechase 5 and 10K, and also the Sasafi champion Cherry Andrin, and Lani Cardona Adawak, the winner of the 5,000 meters at our last event. So there's no major, A grade type of athlete. And like in the men, Sonny Wagdos is pretty good, Braz is pretty good, and then Carado's pretty good. These guys are Braz is really in shape. Carado was impressive in his dry trial run for this. He did a dry trial run for 3K the other day, and he was pretty impressive. And Wagdos is more, he's a good 1500 runner, a good 5,000 meter runner from came from the University of Mindanao originally. He's sort of like supporting this event. I would say he's probably not in his best shape, but he's sort of getting back. He's sort of getting back into his training. So this event is kind of like part of his build up for getting ready for the trials for the SEA Games. So it's good to see at least one national athlete come out and sort of join the virtual events to sort of obviously it's not going to be the most ideal situation is actually racing against people, but at least he's sort of giving himself a chance to get back into shape by actually participating in some sort of event rather than sort of just not really doing any well, not really not doing anything, but not really having any kind of competition at all in comparison. So initially, so So those are pretty much our entries. So I'll be inviting now Happy Denuyo into the room. So she's a PSC strength and conditioning coach for the second part of this to give her insights into the race and also the current situation with athletics at this point. So Happy, hello. I don't mean to catch you off guard there. You seem to be checking your messages or something.
Hi guys, hi
Hi,
everyone, hi
hi,
coach.
Happy.
Hi. Good evening, Happy. Hello.
Sorry, come again.
So Happy, I was just discussing something, and this is probably more than the long distance stuff, something more that we can discuss. I was informed earlier tonight by a source that the Philippine National Open will not happen until the third quarter of the year. So that's going to be around, I thought it was June or July, but according to my source, they said not at least until September. So we're looking at cutting
Mm-hmm.
it really close to the Southeast Asian Games, which are going to be, just 2 months later in September. So my thoughts were that, like if you're an athlete aiming for the Sea Games, or if you're a national athlete trying to get back and defend your space in the Sea Games, really now is the time to sort of, do something about your training because I mean, if the nationals is in September, the training camp is in September. That's only 2 months before the Sea Games, or 3 months if they started in August.
Hello, so sorry,
So
what's your question, Enzo?
yeah, I was just saying that the news was that the national open will not be until about August or September, until about September. So the training camp won't start until the
Mm,
third quarter of the year.
okay, so you're asking for my thoughts, is that it? Or like my opinion?
Well, what like just as your views, as a PSC strength and conditioning
What are my
coach, and
views?
as an
Okay.
upcoming coach in athletics, and my views are like, what should athletes be doing now in February? Because it's going to be, it's like nationals is not till September or October, but that's only a month. That's only like a month or so, or a couple of months before the Sea Games would start. So it's February now. Like in terms of periodization, where should athletes be right now in terms of getting ready for the trials and the Sea Games?
Oh, okay. I get your point. Actually, having a competition on September has like good and bad side. Like for example, if that's the first competition, like for roughly 2 years, if 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 what happened to athletes is if they stop for like 2 years, then having a competition on September would be like um it's somehow not ideal. Okay. However, if like if you've been like training for that long enough, September could be like a start of you or September could be your pre-competition going to the competition phase on December. So again, it really depends on my opinion. It really depends on how the coach is planned it planned their their entire season. Like, cause like within what there has been no competition for 2 years. So so
Yeah,
so basically, there's no competition for 2 years. So having only one like quote unquote main competition too is not ideal, or it's too. I'm looking for the term, pero tawag ito, it's not ideal. Okay. sorry, I'm out of words right now. So if you get the point naman at the end.
So the thing is here, usually the National Open is held in the middle or earlier in the year, which allows, I'm guessing, a two peak sort of periodization plan. So you've got like peak for the Sea Games, peak for the competition, which is 6 months apart. Is it possible to have a mini peak in the for the National Open? So you'll be at, I guess you'd have to be at about 90 to 95% at the National Open and then be at 100% for the Sea Games, which is 2 months later. Is it possible to have a mini peak to use the National Open to bounce onto the Sea Games?
Yes. If if your main if your main competition would be the Southeast Asian Games, then sorry, then the National Open could be one of your evaluation, okay, or like the start. Your as what I've mentioned earlier, your pre-competition. So it's like on the deloading, it could it aside from evaluation, it could be like your time trials as of what you are what your condition is as of the moment. So again, it's how like yes, it could be your mini quote unquote your mini peak. And however, if you're an athlete whose your main competition is the the national open, then then your mindset should be like that's your main event. But then again, if your main competition is Southeast Asian Games, then you can use the national open as your again your evaluation or your pre-competition, like the enter the start of your pre-competition phase or your evaluations like that.
It was interesting because I spoke with, I think both, or I messaged, I didn't really speak with them. I was chatting with them on Facebook. With firstly with Congressman Romero, and then I was also having a chat with Mon Fernandez, who's the chef de mission for the Sea Games, and they're basically talking now about putting a team together for the Sea Games. So I was basically saying that how do you put this team together for the Sea Games this early if you don't even really know who's qualified yet? So they said to me, well, I was told that anybody who got a medal in the last Sea Games, which was 2 years ago, or maybe not 2 years ago, just over 1 year ago, would be automatic for the Sea Games. So that means that if you were a medalist in the last Sea Games, you're automatic. But if you're not a medalist, I was advised that you needed to hit the bronze medal standard of the 2019 Sea Games bronze medal place to be added to the team. So with that in mind, it's as if the task force was basically saying that they will just support the medalists because they're definitely in for the Sea Games, and anybody else just has to hit the standard to be included later on.
Okay. Um, for me, I'm not sure if I comprehend your your question clearly, but um, are you saying that the medalist is like the those who are medalists on the last seasons will be like have an immediate pass to compete for the seasons? Are you saying that?
What I'm saying is the
Or
medalists
is
from the
it
last Sea Games were said to be automatic unless they get
mm,
beaten by other people, who go past their bronze medal standard. So, say for example, bronze medalist. Let's say for example, you have a guy like Sonny Wagdos who got bronze medal in the 5,000 meters. His time is 14:34. If two other people go faster than 14:34 and he doesn't, he loses his spot in Sea Games. But if nobody hits the standard and even he doesn't hit the standard, then he has the privilege of being the bronze medalist at the last Sea Games. So he basically uses that as a safety net to get into the next Sea Games. So they're basically saying that the medalists from the last Sea Games get in unless other people go past their standard from the last Sea Games.
I think I think first having a standard to qualify for the SEA Games is one of the basic requirements. I mean, if you really want to compete in a high level, actually SEA Games is really not that high level. But for Filipinos,
Exactly.
we see SEA Games as one of our Olympics. Okay, I think that's one of the reasons is because of that. That we're looking SEA Games as our Olympics. Well, in fact, it should be that we should be aiming for more. Okay, so going back to what you mentioned, there should be first a qualifier, the same as any other competition, especially like Olympics. There's always a qualifier. Okay, so hence, and actually it's really also case to case basis. So first, if the medalist, like the previous medalist, hits the standard, so he is privileged to to automatically to automatically enter like the race. However, if there are other like competitions or like other prospects who has the potential to also compete to hit the standard, then they should also be on the list. Okay, so unless actually it would be also nice if like the association, if the sports association also gives like a timeline. It gives a timeline as to when is the final like standard. Because it's all again it's also case to case basis. Because like for this veterans, okay, this previous medalist, like experience wise, they have the experience now. So they haven't hit the standard. Sometimes there's a lucky run. Okay, there's a lucky run, the lucky jump that they were able to surpass or like bring home medals during the SEA Games. Or however, for this like newcomers, sometimes if they lack competition or if they lack experience, sometimes they when the competition comes in na, or when during the competition, sometimes they choke. They choke. So sometimes the performance is not that good. So again, we should give fair um, fair competitions, like fair treatment to those uh, Southeast Asian, the previous Southeast Asian medalists, and also those potential athletes who qualified for the standard. That's my take.
I'm going to add that with the Sea Games, I would just like to add that, from a statistics point of view, that some events have varying levels of difficulty. Like, take for example, in the women's, the 5,000 meter qualifying time is only 17:52. You know, compare that to the 800 and the 1,500 with the bronze. The 800 is 209. The 1,500 is like 427, I think. Imagine 427 for the 1,500 is the equivalent of running about 16 minutes, 20 or 16 minutes in the 5K, but the standard is only 17:52 in the 5K. So it's a much easier standard in the 5K than it is in the 1,500. So, I mean, imagine if you're a athlete who runs 1,500 and you can't run 427, let's say you can run 440, you can probably qualify in the 5,000, but you can't qualify in the shorter race because you're off the time by about 14 or so. But then in the long, you've already got the speed to move up to the longer race. So that's also some considerations as well. That some events are just a lot easier to qualify for than certain events. Imagine, and say for example, the men's long jump. You jump the top two guys jump 8 meters, and then the next about 780, 790. That's a pretty strong standard already. I mean, for Southeast Asian level, it's a strong standard compared to, say for example, what else? The Maybe the 110 hurdles at the moment is in the men. It's not so strong. I mean, it's 14.3 or 14.2 or something to get in the top three now. But like there's certain events which are a lot harder than other events to qualify for. And if you look at the um, performances based on the IAA scoring tables, there's a lot of variation in certain events. Like some events, like I mean, imagine the men's pole vault now. You've got before you can jump, you can get away with a 480, 490 jump and get a medal, but now, you need to jump at least 550 to get the bronze or 540 because there's EJ and those two tires, so the standards have really gone up in that event. So there's certain events which are really tough compared to, other events which are not, which are like, which athletes could theoretically qualify for them if they wanted to do them. Imagine also like, I don't know what else, um, what some events as well in the last SEA Games, they only had like four entries as well, or five or four entries. So they didn't have everybody didn't go for certain events. So the standards and some in those events as well is not so high. I think the heptathlon women, the bronze standard isn't very high because there's only four of them competing, and the fourth place only needed to get. I think it wasn't even like it was nowhere near 5,000 points for the fourth place. I mean, Sarah got 5,100 and something, 101 points. Then second, 480, 49, and third would have got 46 or 47. Usually in the SEA Games, you need 5,000 points to get the bronze, but this time you only needed 4,600. So that means that the heptathlon's going to be easier to qualify for in this next SEA Games because the standard wasn't as high. Even in the women's marathon, it was only, for 3 minutes something, for 3 hours something for third. So that wasn't so particularly high as well. But even for excellent example, the men's 1500, 406 won the gold, and 406 is the slowest time in the SEA Games in 42 years. 40 years or 42 years. It's the slowest winning time in SEA Games history. So the bronze is only 411, 409 or 410. Like there's kids in a row that are running that time. So that means that there's one five easy event to qualify for as well at the SEA Games because the standard was low because it was a technical race. Um, so there are certain events which are really easy to qualify for, and some events which are really strong now in at SEA Games level. Um, Another question is, do you think that they're going to have any competitions between September and um, the start of the SEA Games in November?
Sorry, again. What's your
Do
question?
you think they'll have any more tune-up meets before this? After the National Open in September, they'll have some more competitions overseas to get ready, or some more competitions locally to get ready for the SEA Games.
Sorry, one last time, Enzo. Sorry.
Okay, I'll
I
just repeat that. Okay, so the National Open is scheduled for about September. The
mm-hmm.
SEA Games is scheduled to start at the end of November. So that leaves probably 9 to 12 weeks or between the National Open and the SEA Games. So in the 9 to 12 weeks, do you think that they're going to have other competitions leading up to the SEA Games?
there there should be competitions leading to that one. Well, I mean, you're um, if you're doing your periodization or your planning correctly, okay, as what I've mentioned, you can start with Southeast Asia National Open as your pre-competition. So again, it would be ideally if like per month at the end of your, for example, your deloading phase, there should be like an evaluation, or there should be like an evaluation or a mini competition somehow. It's so that the intensity would be maintained. Yeah, it would be maintained. Or like ideally, if you raise your performance, it should be like somehow increasing or maintaining. It should be going downhill. So again, this like um, the sports association, or like if you have the luxury like to compete abroad and do and plot your competitions wisely, then that would be recommended. Because if you're just doing if you're just doing the national open, then wait for 2 months, 2 or 3 months, then do the Southeast Asian, um you might not achieve the peak that you wanted to. So, so again, that really depends on how your coach and like how your body reacts to the program of like to the program that your coach made. So, so yep, I really recommend that there should be like mini competition or tune-ups within those time span. If you
What
have
about
seen,
leading
that's
up
one of the
to
reasons
the?
EJ. Mhm. Sorry, for that.
No, sorry, just continue regarding EJ. Yeah.
Okay, so that's like how EJ is doing right now. If you can see, it's like her competition is in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think. I'm not sure. So it's because prior to Olympics, I think this month, this month is competition phase. That's why that's why his performance is either maintenance or going up. I think after that one, after the end of his last race, um, he would be like the loading, so he'd be going down again. So like go he would be like not resting but like a transition phase for another competition phase on July. So that's how the
What's his
competition should
age
be plotted
in
as well.
July? You said that he has a competition in July. What's his? Does he have a major competition before the Sea Games?
Sorry, come
Isn't
again.
it? Well, is the World Championships like still taking place this year, or oh yeah,
Not
the Olympics, of
sure.
course. So there's the
I
Olympics, the Sea Games. But are there any other meets that he's got coming up before the Olympics?
Sorry, Enzo, you were a bit choppy on your last question. That's why
Does
I
EJ
couldn't
have
hear it
any other
properly.
major competitions before the Olympic Games?
Oh. I'm not so sure because like the last time I talked to his dad, like his coach, his local coach, Coach Emerson, he mentioned like that was way back December, I think. So he mentioned that he'll be doing some indoor his next competition piece was indoor, which is yes, that's like he is doing right now. If if I look the calendar, like assuming not I haven't asked him yet, but assuming this is his competition phase, like at this moment his competition phase, it could be uh-huh. It could be ideal na after this phase, his next major competition would be the SEA Games. The Olympics na.
The
Okay?
Olympics.
So, oo. If I'm the one to question, June. Kasi, diba, his last competition prior to, like, this month was it around September, October, November?
Um, Major competition.
Oo.
I don't know if in 2020 if he's
I'm
had
not
any
so
major competitions because I think in 2019 was the World Championships. I think in 2020 there hasn't been anything major because a lot of the indoor and the Asian meets got cancelled because of the COVID. So I think that his last major one must have been the World Champs in 2019.
I know he competed somewhere where he broke somewhere, right? He broke the record or like he has competition somewhere like that. Anyways, so again, for February, March, April, May, June, July. Ah,
Oh yeah, the other
um,
thing. Yep.
mm-mm. Sige,
The other
sige.
thing I want to add
You
in
were
was
saying?
also from the press conference with Patafa that they had, also announced, according to my source, was that they've really got less candidates for the Olympics now, as we close into the June qualifying. So apparently, Willie Morrison is no longer in content, is no longer doing meets to participate, to try to qualify for the Olympics at this point because he has some personal issues or something that he's got going through. So he's not, he'd be back for Sea Games, but the Olympic, he doesn't really intend to do any Olympic qualifying meets. So that basically he was one of the top contenders to qualify in the men's shot put, but no longer um, committing to trying to hit the standard at this point. So basically, if I look at it, there's really, in my view, there's only three people left there who can really have a good chance of qualifying for the Olympics. One of them wasn't even mentioned by Patafa. Two of them were. Another one was, but I think that she's kind of out of the running at this point. So the ones who are in contention, there's three of them. Number one is Christina Knott. She's trying to qualify for the 2 and the 100, and she's got a really good chance, especially after those good 60-meter runs at the beginning of the year, and the fact that also in the 200 we take into account the qualification is 20 to 80, but according to my data, you might not even need to run 20 to 80 to qualify because not only 31 out of 56 slots have been filled by athletes who ran quicker than 20 to 80. So, even 20 to 9 or 23 might be good enough to get a bonus slot. So that obviously it's better to hit the standard, but if there's a little bit of wiggle room in there if she doesn't. But undoubtedly she will. But what I'm saying is that only 31 of 56 have hit the standard for the number of slots that are allocated for the women's 200. Then in the 100, I've got data on that as well. I think she's around the same sort of placing in the 100 as well. I think about 31 or 32 out of 56 or so have hit the 200, the 100-meter standing. So, I mean, she's ranked, I think, according to my data, she's ranked about 36 or 35th and 36 in the world in those two events based on their times. Then also, also Eric Cray is still kind of in the running, even though he needs to come out and run an outdoor 400 hurdles race at some point, and it's looking really snowy over where he is at the moment. So he has to just come out and go somewhere to run a 400 hurdles where he's got to hit that 48:90. Um, Looking at how his times, he obviously needs to get his 400 down a little bit more to be able to come out and run that 48:90. But not a bad start. Um, the other one who I think has a good chance of qualifying, who hasn't really been mentioned by the Carter at all, is Ian Nelson. So I mean, Ian Nelson's run 23.16, and like as I said, only um, only 31 women have ran under 22.80. So if the standard ends up, if anything under 23.10 gets you into the Olympics with 23.16, if Zion just comes down to 22.9 or 23.0, she might end up getting a bonus, one of those like bonus slots into the Olympics if she hits, so you could theoretically have two women sprinters at the Olympics. There's quite a good chance you could have two women sprinters at the Olympics at this rate, because obviously Christina's training there with Rossan in Texas, and Carla with Rossan in Texas, so she's got a good training camp there. But also take into account that Zia Nelson is with the team at University with Coach Carol Gilbert at USC, so she's got some of the best sprinters in the collegiate system to train with, to race against, to spar with, to train with, to get her ready as well to try to hit that standard, which she'll be going for in about March. So, they're both in very good situations to hit those standards. So, there's a possibility there could be two in the Olympic Games, and then possibly Eric as well. So, there's really three people left in contention at this point, in my view, to qualify for the Olympics. In the women's pole vault, I'll go into that. In the women's pole vault, there's not as many as 56 slots. There's about 32 slots. That's what's allocated. And 21 women have already jumped over the 470. So if we go down to 32, 32 is about 455 at the moment. But by the time we get round to the Olympics, it'll be 460 or 465. So that means that Natalie has to jump by about 35 centimetres to get up to that Olympic qualifying at, PB of 427, 430s. She's going to jump about 30, 35 centimetres more, about 30 centimetres more or so to actually get back to that standard coming off a hand injury. So, it's like a little bit more tough to get up to that mark versus, the other three who've already been close or there in the past to the standards that they actually need. It won't require them making a massive PB. They might need a slight PB to get to a slight PB would get either of those three to the Olympics based on their previous performances, whereas Natalie needs a 30 centimetre gain to get to to get to those bonus spots for the Olympics based on the number of qualifiers at this point. So, what do you think about that analogy, Happy?
I have nothing to say yet. Sorry, I have nothing to say as of the moment. So, I think it would still depend on like the Olympics committee and like the athletes' performance if they would be able to hit the standard or not. Like if the Olympics is giving slots, okay, with or without breaking the standard or like the qualifying time, then that would be good news because we'll be having more participants, like Filipino participants for the Olympics. So I think that's all that I can say. Yeah. Nothing more. Nothing. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
much more.
so the deadline for the events, I think it's June. For certain events, it's June. For some events, it's the end of May to the middle of June, depending on your event. For example, well, if we look at the women's marathon, there's like 84 slots, and there's already like 95 athletes qualified past the standard in that event. Imagine the women's marathon was 2:45 last 2 hours 45 last 2 hours and 45 minutes last Sea Games, and they reduced it. That now it's even harder. They changed it to 2 hours 29, so it got 16 minutes more difficult to qualify for the women's marathon. But even still, more than 84 women hit the standard for the number of slots. So, like 95 already hit the standard, and there's still more time for more to actually qualify in for the marathon. So that the marathon standard may even need to go down to 2 hours 27 next time because it's still very, a lot of athletes can still hit it quite easily. It's not like, imagine in the sprint events, imagine in the men's 100. I remember back in, I think it was 2000 or the 2000 Olympics, there used to be the B standard. You could go to the Olympics if you ran about 10:30 or 10:29. You could go to the Olympics. Now you need to run 10:05 to get in. And in the men, I think only like 29 or 27 men out of 64 have ran under 10:05 because it's even though there's quite a few guys who run under 10, a lot of them are all from the same country. So it's really there's most of those guys who run under 10 are from the US or like, and then maybe before it was Jamaica, US, Jamaica, and Great Britain. That's where all the sub 10 guys are from. So that's why only three of them get to go, and that's why all the other countries struggle really hard to get sub 10 guys. Maybe South Africa probably, or Nigeria, they get sub 10 guys, but a lot of these other countries really struggle to get sub 10 because you almost need to be sub 10 to go to qualify. You need to be 10:05, so you're pretty much almost low 10 or sub 10 to even get into the Olympics. If you run 10:3, you won't even you don't even get you won't even get on the start list.
Hmm. Um, it would okay. So again, it's a tough competition for the women since as you mentioned there were 90 plus athletes qualified and only 80 plus are the slots available.
What I think will happen is, Happy, if
Okay,
you
so
have
it would be
more
really tough
athletes
for
than the
like
number of
this. Mm-mm. Sorry, come again.
if you have more athletes qualified, say for example, if the qualifying standard for the Olympics is 2 hours and 9:30, if you have so there's 84 slots only, I think what they'll do is they'll allow more athletes in the number of slots. If you have more people, because they've all hit the standard, so you can't just say, "Oh, sorry, there's not enough slots, you can't go," because they've all hit the standard, and the standard is the main way to qualify. The bonus slots are just there just in case not enough people qualify. So if more people, if 100 people qualify, they'll probably let 100 people run because they all achieve the standard, which is the main way of qualifying for the Olympics. But of course, if 100 people qualify by hitting the standard, there won't be any bonus slots left for anyone who didn't hit the standard.
Mm, okay, okay, I get it.
But I think that they'll allow more people to go because let's put it this way: let's say if 100 people go for the women's marathon in um, in Tokyo and they go to the village, and let's say if some of them get tested positive for COVID, they won't be allowed to run. So obviously, just because 100 women are entered in the event doesn't mean they're all going to start. There might be some of them who can't get clearance to go out because they test positive for COVID before, or they test positive for COVID during the games. So there's possibilities that that even though there's more than the number of slots, it might be that less of them actually compete because of COVID and other things prevent them from being able to start.
Mm, I see. Then that would be ano to? Uh, that would be I'm looking for the right term. Pero uh, then that would be a great motivator like for those athletes, especially our athletes who are competing in marathon, na to, to really work harder so that they would be able to hit the standard. Kasi I think I remember na hitting hitting the qualifying time is 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 another thing, and competing in an Olympics is another thing. So those two factors, like the qualifiers and the Olympics, are two different competitions. Sometimes
And
when you're focused, oh,
it also
sige,
depends
go.
on the level of athlete you are. Because for some athletes, they have to basically go all out just to qualify for the Olympics. And by the time they get to the Olympics, they're already kind of worn. They're already kind of worn
Yes.
out. And when they go to the Olympics, they've already peaked to get to the Olympics. And then they just can't peak again. So they're really just participating, and they're not performing as well as what they needed to get to the Olympics. But for me, just making the Olympics, even if you finish dead last, you actually still did the work to actually get to the Olympics, which is the important thing. I mean, some athletes, to be like a top eight or an Olympic medalist or even a champion at the Olympics, you need to a lot of it really boils down to genetics, and and obviously the work and stuff, but genetics and all that sort of stuff. But the thing is that not everybody is that has that type of genetics where they can actually just come out and, like get like a top three. But just getting to the Olympics is already like very special in itself. Just having done the qualifying to actually legitimately get into the Olympics.
Yes, you're very right there, Phil. Because like before, I was wondering like how come like our athletes who compete in Olympics wouldn't be able to hit their personal best during the game, the Olympic itself. So I was wondering during that time. So when I asked one of my mentors, he told me, and I quote, um, those two, okay, wait lang. He mentioned that Olympics is really a different level, is a different level of competition. Okay, so you must have this extraordinary mindset and experience to be able uh, to be able to stand in the podium during Olympics. So so yun, sometimes like some of our athletes won't be able to even have their season's best during the Olympics. It's because one is their mindset, like their mindset is just to qualify or like to play for Sydney is also a big thing, so that could be a factor. Second one is like the peaking, the environment of the competition of Olympics itself. It's too high that some of our athletes or some athletes won't be able to really be at par with. Okay, so I think I haven't mentioned it to you, Enzo, but CJ, no, CJ, EJ could be one of the top 8 in Olympics. It's because first, as of the moment, he's already competing with one of the top athletes in of the athletes in the world. So her experience-wise is already there. She's able to like
Yeah,
compete at their level of standard and stuff like that. However, for some of our athletes who haven't even trained or who haven't even competed with these top level athletes, they might be like intimidated when they're on the Olympic level itself. So that's one of the factors. Qualifying for the standard is one thing. Competing in the Olympics is another thing. So there's a lot of factors to really consider. Aside from the coaches programming, also the environment, like the competition environment, their mental toughness, and such and such. Yeah, and that's all we can say.
when we discuss EJ, there was a quote like from a source which was from Philip Wiko, president of PATAFA, regarding the only Olympic qualifier at this stage, EJ Obiena, like basically a prediction on how well that the PATAFA felt that EJ was going to perform at the Olympics. So they said they want to keep a like basically they've said in the Patafa's view, from the quote, they've said that with EJ, they're going to keep a modest view on how they feel he's going to perform, and they saying like he's a medal chance he's a medal chance is what the a chance to be a medalist, like the first medalist in the Olympics since Miguel White way back in the 1936 Berlin Olympics in the 400 hurdles. That was their view. So my view is in line with what you said, Happy, where you said that EJ has a can be certainly be in the top eight. But as we know, if you make the top eight in an event, you know, let's say even like in a lower competition like the Polarompam Bun. So once you're in the top eight, usually the top two are usually very exceptional compared to everybody else, and then the third to the eighth is basically, as you said before, lucky jump, anybody's game because everyone's fairly evenly matched. It comes down to nerves. It comes down to who wants it more on the day. It comes more to even in athletics, if somebody's got an ingrown toenail sometimes. So there's a lot of factors, that can determine your placing from third to eighth. But I honestly think that the gold and the silver medalists are usually a lot more exceptional than everybody else, or especially the gold medalists. And in this case, in the men's pole vault, Duplantis, I mean, consistently over 6 meters, world record holder and Olympic record holder in the pole vault at 6:15 and 6:16, who's looked almost untouchable this season. And I'd also not rule out, because a lot of people were saying that Ronald Levelani was already very old at 35, but Ronald Levelani has jumped 6:02 this year, and he's been jumping better than he's been jumping the last 4 or 5 years. He's really sort of come into form this year as well. The other athlete I think that we also need to watch for is um, I think his name's Chris Nilsson from the United States. He's jumped 5:92 and 5:95 this year. He's jumped 2 PBs. So, he's also like a dark horse in that event as well. So I think that, EJ is in really good shape, having jumped PB 586. He's in really good shape and very good contention. But, there's still a long way to go to the Olympics. I mean, it's early at the moment, so there's a lot to be done.
Okay. Actually, yes, you do. You. That's why. You are correct at that one. That's what I meant. That's why I mentioned he could be on the top eight. Also, there is a chance for the top eight. Okay, so top eight is because, as you mentioned, I forgot the other, like the French guy and the USA guy. It could be na at this point the reason why they're not having a good performance yet is because like they could be under pre-comp phase. We really don't know. Okay, so again, it will that's also a factor because those like the names that you mentioned, like the ones who were jumping 6 meters and those other athletes, they're more exposed to competition like this. Like they're more exposed to world championships, to Olympics, to other competitions. That's why, as what I've mentioned before, they have the experience, so they can use their quote unquote veteran move because again, Olympics is a different, is another, it's another side of the story. There's a lot of pressure. I'm not sure right now since we're in pandemic, so I'm not sure there will be a lot of people watching. But then again, the competition within the Olympics is really different compared to the usual competitions right now. However, EJ could depends on how well his competition because or not doing well as well logically or other things, podium finish. If not, if his competitors are doing well mentally, physically, etc., then EJ not have a podium finish. So again, it's case to case basis. So again, it's because some has more experience, has more competitions in high school. So ayun, it's really like a lot of factors to consider. So yun, I think yun lang naman.
At the last Olympics, in the men's pole vault, Thiago Braz, EJ's teammate, he really showed, like he really tipped over the card on the big boys in terms of the men's pole vault, because I mean he wasn't expected to win, but Thiago Braz from Brazil just came out and he got the edge over Lavaleni at the last Olympics, and then Duplantis emerged on the scene after that.
Yes, I remember that part. So again, it's a lot of factors. We have this in jumpers we have this quote unquote lucky jump. So maybe Thiago during that time had his lucky jump. So ayun, also maybe who's his competitor during that time? It's the French guy, right? I forgot the name.
Lavellini, because
Was
at
it?
that point,
Lalini.
you know, yeah, because the Plantis is very young. You know, I think the Plantis is only like 21 or 22. So, you know, in the last Olympics, the Plantis was only 17 years old, and he wasn't, you know, he wasn't really anybody at that point. It was only, I believe, you know, by about 2018 that the Plantis really started coming onto the scene because he's really
Mm.
young. Whereas Lavellini's 35, the Plantis is about 21 at this point.
Hmm. Then we'll just wait for for the Olympics. I don't have a definite answer right now, but if if that 20-year-old guy, I think if that young kid would be is starting to like is 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 his career just started yet, so there's a chance that he may surpass Lavellini, yeah, the 35-year-old. So yun, again,
He already
let's
has. He already has.
oh yeah, is that the first guy or the Sweden
The
guy?
Plantis from Sweden, um, before Lavellini broke the world record of Bubka, then the Plantis broke the world record of Renard Lavellini. So the Plantis is the current world record holder, but he's only 21 years of age.
Well, good for him. I mean, he has a good coach. He got the he had like genetics as well. His training is really good. His competition is good as well. Then, yun,
I think
let's
he
wait for
trained
the
in Florida,
Olympics.
if I'm not mistaken. I think the Plantis was, I think he trained over in Florida because he represents Sweden, but I think he grew up in Florida.
Hmm. Oh, well, actually, I'll just wait for the Olympics because again, Olympics is a different competition. World Championship is a different competition. European Championship or whatsoever international competitions is a different one. So it's it's how again their coach or their body respond to the stresses of the Olympics if they would be able to have a peak performance or not. So again, I'll just wait for the Olympics. I really don't have a definite answer right now. I'll just be waiting for the Olympics. To see if Lavellini would be able to still defend his no he did not defend his title, but if he would be having a gold this time.
Yeah, it's really interesting how the top three sort themselves out in this Olympics. I mean, I'm pretty sure on Duplantis, but you know, it'll be interesting how the second and third sort themselves out among the rest.
Sorry, come
I'm
again?
pretty sure about Duplantis at this point, but you know, it's months away. If the Olympics was now, for sure Duplantis would win. If the Olympics was now, but you know, a lot can happen in 6 to 7 months.
Yes.
But if the Olympics was now, Duplantis and Lavellini would probably get gold and silver if it was now. But
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I'm saying that if the Olympics was now, they'd probably get gold and silver. EJ would be in the top eight. But that's if it
Yep.
was now. But there is 6 or 7 months, so a lot can happen in 6 or 7. You know,
Yes.
well, I don't know if it's 6 or 7 months. What month is it? Is it July or August or
It's
June?
July, I think. I'll check
So that
Olympics.
so that's
Yeah, a
March,
lot of
April,
happen.
May. So it's about 3 or 4 months. So
It's
yeah,
in
it's not.
July.
So maybe a bit can happen, and not a lot, but a bit can happen still. Then in that case, because you know, 4 months is still time, but it's not that much it's not that much time. I thought it was 6 or 8 months, but if it's if it's 3 or 4 months, it's there can still be some changes, I guess, but not a lot.
5 months actually. 5 months and two
Five
weeks. 5 months and two
years,
weeks.
but that's still a while to go. Then if it's that's still quite a while to go. Five months and 2 weeks.
Well, a lot can happen. A lot, right? That's the term I was looking for. A lot can happen. Yeah, like injuries. Yeah, it really depends on how their coach would really tweak their training or like their programming. It really depends on the coach. Because if you're doing as I remember, I read one of the articles. If you're having a high level competition, when we meant high level or elite competition, that's Olympic level or World Championship level, okay, not SEA Games level. So then if you're competing for high level competitions, um, sometimes the programming doesn't really work. The periodization sometimes doesn't work. It's because um, it's very hard to during that time it's very hard to really make improvement because you're already in a high level. It's like you you've founded everything already. So a small increment of or a small improvement takes months to prepare for. So again, depends on your coaching, on your coach's experience or like your coach's knowledge on how he would able to pick your programming. Because sometimes may tell na, okay, it depends on your body's adaptation. For example, you didn't train yesterday, but however for today you're not feeling well or not doing well. So sometimes the coach will pick on it. So that's how flexible the coach would be if he or she is in an elite level, because there's really a lot of factors to consider. However, for local or for younger athletes, periodization really works well. But then again, if you have more training experience, your competition is high enough, sometimes the periodization doesn't work anymore. Sometimes. Okay, I'm not saying it doesn't work completely. Sometimes it doesn't work because again there's a lot of factors to
Well, it has to
consider.
be. I wouldn't say it doesn't entirely work, but I would say that adaptations need to be made to the model to to in order to try to maximize the performance. Then adaptations would need to be made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Yep, yep.
And yeah, you're right. As an athlete gets better, it gets harder to get those those incremental performances as they become more um what would be the word, more um conscious or more aware of how they're actually performing. Like it gets harder to get those increments. I mean, like for example, you have a beginner athlete, like a complete novice athlete who's not really that well rounded to start off with. That athlete, he or she might break their PB 10 times in the year. So they might,
Yes.
you know, say for example, you got a girl running 16 second in 100. She might break her time. She might run 15.5, 15 flat, 14.5, 14.3 until she gets down to about maybe 13 in a year. But then again, when you got that athlete the second year, you might get her from 13 to maybe 12.5. Like you're not going to get as big a jump in the second year with an athlete as what you got in the first year because there's less gains for them to make as they get more um, as they get more experience. There's less gains for them to make from the first year is always the biggest jump with athletes, and then after that, it's basically diminishing improvements each year after that. But there should still be improvements, you know, even if the improvements are less. So, like, if you get, maybe you go from 16 to 13 the first year, 13 to 12.5, then 12.5 to 12 12.2, then maybe 12.2 to 12, and then 12 to 11.8 or 11.9, and then 11.8 to 7. You can still be, the athletes are still improving, but not by as much each year.
Sorry, come again.
Now, what my example was here, that was when you have a novice or a beginner athlete, in the first year they're going to make a big jump, and then the years after that, the jump's going to get smaller. So I took, for example, a female sprinter for 100 meters. So say for the first, she comes to you, she's running 16 seconds, and she's never really done that much training. She hasn't done anything, but she just runs a 16 seconds in the first trial you give her. Then after a year, she might go 15.5, 15.4, 15.2, 15.48, and then she might end up getting down to about 13 flat. So let's say you've got 3 second improvement in the first year, 16 to 13 flat. She's not going to go 3 seconds in the second year because that's 10 flat, and that's kind of impossible. So in the second year, she might go 13 flat to 12.5. Then in the third year, she might go 12.5 to 12.2. In the fourth year, she might go 12.2 to 12 flat. Then in the fifth year, she might go 12 flat to about 11.8 or 11.9, then 11.7 in the sixth year. So what I'm saying is she's improving, but the gains are less each year because she's getting more experience. So there's less things that you can actually do that lead to major gains. Because imagine the first year you're teaching her basically drills, how to run properly, how to use spike shoes, probably how to use the blocks, just plyometrics, just all the basic stuff, which is the most important. But as time goes on, you need to find other ways to improve the athlete. In the second year, you might need to add in quite a bit of you know like lifts and strengthening stuff that helps her. It might gain you another half. Then after that, you probably need to go into video analysis and get more technical about like aspects of form and things like tips and tricks. And so then it becomes like
Yeah, sorry. Yes, you're completely correct. Yeah, you are correct. With that one. Because like I forgot the right term. Pero yun, as your training experience increases, your training gains decreases. That's why that's why Olympic level sometimes there's a lot of the coaches will do a lot of like as you mentioned, it could be due to your shoes, due to your equipment, due to your one of the big factors there, okay, is your mental health, the
yeah.
stresses, simple as your recovery, how your lifestyle, like your sleeping patterns, your nutrition, that's really a big factor to consider. Yeah, sometimes um, you'll be doing, for example, as your experience get older. For example, those in a sprint, that 20 millisecond, okay, that 0.20 millisecond that you be decreasing your time, so you're more faster, takes, for example, 4 months or 6 months in preparation. That's how um, that's how complex it gets when you're more experienced athlete now. So yeah.
I mean, it gets to the point in sprints where, like when you get when you're looking for millisecond gains, it gets to the point, where your steps land, the length of your steps and where they land. It gets to that point with video analysis as well, where they even look at, the amount of force you're putting into the ground, the amount of, where your steps actually land as well, into the aspect of just gaining, just a slight millisecond over, the foot placements in the sprint. How many strides are you taking, how long are those strides, how well are they placed, how efficient are those strides. You know, it gets to like the very minute details once an athlete gets to that level. Anyway, I think it's been good talking. We've been chatting for about an hour and a bit, but thanks for coming on, and also thanks Brian for coming on. I think we'll just wrap this up for tonight. It's about 12:30 here. Okay. All right. So I'd just like to thank all the viewers tonight for coming on and supporting us. So shout outs to the following. To the athletes: Yuhai Go, Samantha Victor, Rommel Rubico, Ninoy Mariak, Mary Marquez, Laika Jana, Markovin Revelia, Japsi Nabor, Leoka Serrano, Rule Barona, Rem Celestial, Ronel Alburica, JP Morales, Anthony Jimenez, Wenlake Montero, Mina Daigam, and Cristobal Martez, Domingo Manata, and many others who I'd also like to thank for turning up tonight. Well, it's now 12:30 here, and I hope you get some rest. Anyway, thank you everybody for showing your support tonight, and we should be back on Thursday. It's now actually Wednesday here. Thank you all, and good night.